Welcome to the And She Looked Up Creative Hour podcast. I'm your host, Melissa Hartfield, and I'm an artist and an entrepreneur. And yes, those two things can go together. This podcast is for the artists, the creatives, and the makers who want to find a way to make a living doing what they love. Hello everyone, it's Editing Melissa popping in again this week. As I mentioned last week, during the recording of this episode and the previous episode, I had some technical issues with my mic that have since been sorted out, but that just means that in this episode, the sound quality is not quite what it normally would be. Gabby, on the other hand, sounds fantastic, and we get into a really interesting discussion today on multi-passionate entrepreneurism. So, on with the show. Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode number 32 of the podcast. As always, I'm your host, Melissa, and I am here once again today with my October co-host, Gabby Peyton. Welcome back, Gabby.
Thanks. I'm really excited for this episode.
Me too. This is going to be a fun one for us. But before we dive in, this is actually Gabby's last episode for the month of October, which I just wanted to say thank you so much for being here. It has been so fun to get to talk to you a little more than we normally get to chat. And I really appreciate you taking out the time from your busy schedule. And before we go too far, I was just thinking that maybe you could let everybody know where they can find you online if they want to continue following you or getting in touch with you.
Absolutely. I was delighted to be here and chat for this month. If you want to follow me and see everything that I'm eating, Instagram is probably the best place to follow me. I'm at Gabby Peyton Eats, so it's very easy. That's also my handle on Twitter. And then my blog is The Food Girl in Town. So if you want to follow, I do a lot more hotel reviews there and restaurant reviews and that kind of stuff. Yes. So you can follow it all.
Gabby's vlog is one of my favorites, to be honest. Yeah, I do. I don't know. I just like living vicariously through her. I think you and I have a lot in common. So a lot of the places that you like to go and see are also places that are on my bucket list. And I like eating a lot of the stuff that you eat. So. No, but there's just something very warm and welcoming about Gabby's website. So if you love food and travel, I highly recommend that you check it out. So today we are diving into a topic that both Gabby and I identify with quite a bit. And I suspect that a lot of the people listening to this identify with what we're going to be talking about today. And that is I don't know, for lack of a better word, identifying as a multi-passionate creative. And this is a word that seems to have become a little more popular in the last year. I'm certainly hearing it more than I used to hear it. I think in the past you might have heard it, people referred to as like a Renaissance man or woman, kind of implying that you do a lot of different things and you're interested in a lot of different things. I think sometimes it's a term that maybe has some, I don't want to say derogatory, but I think sometimes if you are somebody who is interested in a lot of different things, you can kind of be labeled as being a bit flaky or maybe not somebody who isn't capable of focusing on things, or somebody who doesn't finish what they start, all that kind of stuff. And we were just talking before we started recording about how while we were both researching this a little bit, we started to feel a lot better about being people who kind of are multi-passionate creatives. So that's what we're going to be talking about today, because there's definitely some challenges that go along with being a person who has a lot of interests. But I think, as we both have found in the last little bit, there's also a lot of positives. And I actually read this quote this morning that I loved, and it is, being good at many things doesn't make you a mess. It makes you a masterpiece, a damn good one. And I loved that. I'm like, yes.
I love that.
Yeah, I found that on a website by Stina Fey, and I'll put that in the show notes so you can go check out her article on being a multi-passionate person.
Yeah, well, I think there's, yeah, I mean, I think like you said, like you don't want to have, it's kind of derogatory, but there's almost like a shame, I think, surrounding that word because it means somehow that you're not focused or that it's hard to define yourself in a career or put yourself in a box. So I think, yeah, that's really interesting that you said that because I do think it exists.
I think career wise, that was maybe the hardest one for me. I'm a little bit older than you, so I'm very firmly in Gen X. And I remember when I started working, there was very much still this lingering idea that you would go get a job and you would be loyal to that company until you retired or unless you were let go. And that's where most of my friends' parents found themselves. My dad, my mom was a professional, so she was self-employed, but it was very much like your parents stayed where they started,
Exactly.
and while that was going away when I started, there was still some lingering effects of it. But we still, back in those days, you stayed at jobs longer than you wanted to because you didn't want those gaps, like not gaps, but those
Yes, yeah,
hops on your resume,
yeah.
right? Like, oh, you move around every 2 years. What's wrong with you? Kind of thing. That was still very
Exactly.
much a thing. And I think today, particularly for millennials and the people after the millennials.
Yeah, well, it's funny because, like we said the other day, we were talking about LinkedIn, and you asked me if I used it, and I said I don't know if I know how, and maybe I think that because you really have to define who you are in one line, and I can't do that. It just doesn't work.
It's so hard. And it's funny you should mention that because when I started researching potential guests for the podcast, I started looking at people on LinkedIn and I'm seeing more and more people who identify themselves with 3 or 4 words. So it might say
Hmm.
digital content creator, artist, and then they'll have like a third one, like podcaster or something.
Right.
And like I think Heather Travis, when I was looking at her link, and I know Heather really well, but I was looking at her LinkedIn profile and it was something like artist, communicator, and she had something else. And I'm like, wow, that sums Heather up. And so Heather's another person that I would consider to be a multi-passionate
Absolutely. Yeah.
creative. So when I saw that, I'm like, oh, that's how you do it. Because I'm exactly like you. It's like, well, I have all these things, and I don't just want people to see one thing. I want them to see all the things in case something really cool. I'm missing out on something that I really want to do because somebody just sees, oh, she just does this kind of thing. I'm
Yeah.
not being very articulate about that, but yeah, it's really hard to kind of define yourself when you're a multi-passionate creative. And this is something I'm struggling with so much right now, personally, is how to brand myself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And I think because so much of who you are online and, on LinkedIn or Instagram or your blog is so much of like your brand. And that is such a big part of like people want to know who you are right away. They don't want to have to dig too deeply or spend much time. And I think, for a long time, I was kind of looking at myself like a jack of all trades and kind of somebody who could do all those things, but not knowing how to present it. But now I'm just like, okay, I'm just like the queen of transferable skills. That is like,
Yes. Which really, when you think about it, makes you far more employable than somebody who has a very narrow set of skills. And one of the things that kind of I worry about, I don't have kids, but just watching a lot of my friends who do have kids, a lot of them are in that university phase. They're just starting
yeah,
university, just finishing high school, just starting university, and just watching them kind of figure out where to direct themselves and trying to figure out how the job market is going to change
yeah,
in the next 20 years. And I personally think it's going to change dramatically in the next 20 years.
100%. Yeah.
And trying to figure out what skills are going to best serve them. And I think there's a new appreciation for people who have Bachelor of Arts degrees because while there may not be a big call for history majors like you and me out
Yeah.
there in the world, there is a big call for people who have learned a lot of the soft skills like
Yeah.
research and the ability to write properly and the ability to present to a group of people and all those sort of soft skills that are sometimes overlooked. I guess.
Oh yeah. And my mom, it's so funny because my mom always hammered that into me like throughout my arts degree. Because after I decided not to be a high school teacher, I kind of, studied history, studied French because I was really interested in it. And she always said to me, but you were learning really important skills. Like you'll be able to sell yourself past your BA or your BA ons because you have those research skills and you know how to go to a library and you find things and you know how to write and that can transfer. So yeah, that was something my mom, I will say, always really hammered home to me if ever I was dismayed about my lack of career opportunities. So
Yes, I went through the exact same crisis when I decided I didn't want to be a teacher, and it was like, oh, what do I do with I'm like, I was a year shy of graduating. It's like, okay, so what are my options? And my mom said very much the same things. And another one that she said to me that I think gets overlooked is that you're learning to think critically. And that is such an overlooked skill, especially in the world of social media today or of online propaganda.
yes.
And that's actually what I focused on when I was doing my history degree, was on the use of propaganda during World War I and World War II. So I learned a lot about how to think critically about the information that's being presented to me. And I think that's
Yeah.
a skill that is really missing today.
Oh yeah. For sure.
Based on my Facebook feed. Just insane. But yes, I think so. I think, there's a bigger appreciation now for people who are graduating with those softer skills because they're applicable to so many other things. And those more technical skills are skills that can be taught pretty much at any stage along the way. If you're doing an arts degree and you're wondering what the meaning of life is when you finish school, there's lots of meaning there.
Well, and I think too, being part of that is connecting those dots. I mean, for me, I was thinking about this a lot and all the kind of realms that I'm really interested in, and art history and food photography, food styling, food writing, and they all have a very visual component, which I never really kind of nailed into before. But it's all very visual or tactile, and that's something that has always really interested me. But I didn't really realize it until I kind of started connecting those dots. And so that being creative in that way has kind of, I feel like I've opened my eyes now into ways I can connect those dots and kind of think about those things in a different way. Writing about food history or, styling food history, there's totally lots of different windows now.
There is. And I was thinking about this yesterday. I think one of the reasons why blogging has become so popular for so many, and why so many have forged careers out of it, is because it really is in many ways the ultimate career for a multi-passionate creative. You get to write, you get to be a photographer, you get to be a videographer, a graphic designer, you get to be an art director, you get to put it all together. And I think a lot of people find a tremendous amount of satisfaction in being able to scratch all those different creative itches and still put together something that is whole. That was a light bulb to me this morning. I've been in this field for so long, and it really just kind of dawned on me this morning, like, blogging really is the career for the multi-passionate. And I mean, I think there's other things that we can also do. So I guess one of the hardest things with when you are a multi-passionate creative is trying to figure out what your career path is.
Yes.
Like, you have all these skills and things that you like to do. And this is something that, like I mentioned earlier, I'm kind of struggling with right now. But how do you figure out where to focus? Because we all need to make money at the end of the day. Yeah. We all need to. I mean, it would be great if I could just dabble in all these different things and have fun with it. But ultimately, I have bills to pay. How do you figure out which path to pursue or which interest is the one that you need to focus on right now? And I've been thinking about that a lot the last few days. And I don't really have an answer. I'm just throwing this out there into the wind, but I don't know. Like, how have you kind of gone about that?
I think for me, and this is something I still struggle with. I think that like it's something that I try to find a balance with because, especially living in a smaller city, like we talked about this before, where I kind of get to do all kinds of different things. I mean, multi-passionate also can equal multi-revenue, but for me, it's kind of deciding what fits into my schedule or what I'm excited about too. And like I think, people have come to me with like photography gigs, events or whatever, and if if I'm able to do it, then I can, or it kind of just what feels right for me at that moment. Because yeah, like you said, it is a bit of a balance. You do obviously have to make money, but there are things that I do because I'm really excited to do them for very little money, and there's things that I have turned down that have offered a lot of money because I wasn't excited about it. So I think for me, it depends on the project. And I think being a freelancer, I'm really lucky that I get to choose the projects and seek out things, or if things come to me, and be able to pick between the two. And I think it's just about finding the balance. What is exciting to you? Because I think as creatives, if you're not excited about it, the content shows that.
Yes, that's very true. It really does. And I think that's probably why the freelance or the gig economy is so popular right now. I think there's other economic reasons for that as well. But I think there are a lot of us who wouldn't be happy in a corporate job where we are, have a very narrow focus. I know I wasn't. And that's one of the reasons I left.
Oh yeah, I find it creatively stifling. Like I found it like even working at Atlantic Business where I got to write about a lot of great, cool things. We still worked a 9 to 5 schedule, and I found it very difficult to be creative from 9 to 5.
Yeah.
It's like impossible.
That was a huge reason why I quit my job, is that my normal rhythms don't match the corporate rhythm. And I think, in the past, we're made to feel like there's something wrong with us because, I don't function between 7 a.m. and noon. My best time to get work done is like between 2 p.m. and 7 p.m. So many, that doesn't necessarily fit in the corporate world, but as a freelancer or as owning my own businesses, I'm allowed to figure out where I can concentrate my best efforts. I'm a night owl. I just don't function in the morning. So that was very much a part of wanting to go out and be a freelancer. And I think that's one of the things that people who identify with being multi-passionate really struggle with, is there's a lot of stigma, I think, that goes with it. Like I see this with some of my really good friends today. I was lucky. I had very supportive family who kind of recognized from the get-go that I was creative and didn't really try to not stifle it. I don't think parents try to stifle their kids' creativity, but they really tried to make sure I had avenues for it. And I was never made to feel like I needed to, both, my dad's very technical, my mom was a doctor. I was never made to feel that I had to go down those paths when it was so obvious it was not a good fit for me. But I have other friends who really are kind of, called the black sheep of the family, or it's like, oh, so-and-so's just being flaky, or when is so-and-so ever going to figure it out and just settle down, or all those kind of, like there's something wrong with you.
Yeah, and I think I have never held a 9 to 5 more than 2 years, and it's because eventually I get so stifled creatively that I just have to walk away. And I think a lot of people, I have friends who don't get it. They have careers, they went to university, they got their jobs, and they're still in those jobs 15 years later. And I think they don't really understand, I need those changes. I need the different outlets in order to kind of function. And they don't see how not working 9 to 5 is a productive, or you could actually make a living off doing that. And I think society has kind of, you're not in the box. So people don't really know how to deal with it. Like if I'm at a dinner party, people are like, what's your job? And I'm like, well, I do this and I do this and I do this. So it's hard.
What do you do for a living? How much time do you have?
But at the opposite side of that, I'm definitely a very fun dinner party guest because I've been to Turkey on an archaeological dig, or I've worked in Toronto. I've done all these different things, and people always are fascinated by all the different things I've done. So there's two different, I guess, pros and cons of being a dinner party guest.
Yeah, you become like the curiosity at the table. Oh,
yeah,
that girl who does all those things. Yeah, No, that's very true, and I've definitely had friends over the years who have those very stable government jobs with pensions and all those things, who really don't understand what I do, and some of them are incredibly supportive, even though they don't quite get it. But then I've had others who are just kind of like, pat you on the head and be like, oh, that's so cute that you have this little business. It's like, ugh, it's not cute.
Yeah.
It's not a little business. I mean, it is a little business, but it's not little in the way that you're implying,
No, it's not your little side hustle, like.
And I think there's a lot of us out there who can relate to having those conversations. So what I was kind of hoping we could do at this point is like, let's turn it around and figure out how to, I guess, celebrate it or embrace what it is that we do, and how to turn it into something, how to turn it into an advantage. And one of the things that is a hard one for me is keeping track of all the things that I want to do. I always have like a million things that very much shiny object syndrome sometimes. Like, oh, that looks fun. I want to try that. Or how about this? And so I guess, how do we keep track of all those different things that we want to do? Do you have like a bucket list that you kind of keep going, like a career bucket list of things you want to hit?
Oh my gosh, I probably have like dozens of iPhone messages to myself or notes in my iPhone of different ideas or different things I would like to pursue. And yeah, I mean, I agree with you. A challenge is prioritizing that and realizing what's actually attainable, or steps to actually making it attainable. It's definitely challenging. I like to look at it in a way that then all your eggs are not in one basket. So I think kind of visualizing it and like trying to figure out how to prioritize it is important, but I don't think discrediting everything. I find when I don't have a project or something creative, I feel like I have nothing on the go. My life is a sham and all these things. So it's like, so I think having the projects and having those things and in prioritizing them. Yeah, like I think I have to look through my notes every now and then and look back at good ideas or good stories or different things. But yeah, figuring out how to prioritize them is definitely a challenge.
Yeah, I have notebooks all over the place, just with scribbles of ideas and things, just to get them out of my head so that I can focus on whatever needs to get done. What I need to get done in order to finish a contract or finish a project or pay my bills kind of thing. But yeah, when it comes to prioritizing, I think one of the things that I've noticed over the last 10 years since I've been self-employed is that there does tend to be an underlying theme to everything that I do. And I have kind of come to recognize that I love growing a community. That is like super important to pretty much anything that I take up. And I also love to help people see their potential. I think that's the teacher part in me, like wanting to be that teacher but back in the day. And I mentioned this in a previous episode with Lisa, how I kind of gave up on teaching. But as I've progressed through my career, I realized that teaching has always been there in some form or another, whether it's coaching employees or coaching on the side or teaching workshops or doing, one-on-one sessions. Like there's always been this element of helping people. So that's one thing I've kind of come to realize, is that when I am kind of looking at all the things I want to do, is I sort of tend to look for, is there an opportunity for me to grow a community around this of people who are like that? And is there an opportunity for me to help people see their potential? And that is something that I've only really recognized in the last year or two. But it has made a huge difference in helping me figure out what it is that I want to do next. So, and I think, unfortunately, though, that's something that only comes with experience. I don't think I could have figured that out when I was 23, or maybe I don't even know if I could have figured it out when I was 30. I think that's something that's definitely come to me in the last few years, but as a result of trying all these other things.
Yeah. And, like I said earlier, like I think just going with your gut on a lot of those things. Like, I have lots of ideas, and then the next day I'm like, oh, that's just I'm never going to do that. That's not going to happen. think too, self-reflection and analysis, like you said, and looking at knowing yourself, and I think helps to prioritize, because there are things that I have not done and regretted not doing because I thought it just wasn't the right time, or I wouldn't make any money off it. And then I regretted not doing it. And vice versa, the things I've done that I wish I hadn't because it took way more time or energy than I thought it was going to. And I wasn't excited about it. So I think, yeah, you really kind of have to, learn about yourself and know yourself. And then kind of you have to trust your gut, I think.
Yeah. Definitely.
That's what creatives do.
That's what I was just going to say. I think a lot of us really do kind of work from our gut. I certainly do. It's interesting because I have in my main business, FBC, I have a business partner who, when I first met him, did not view himself as creative at all. I think in the last few years, he has come to recognize that he is actually creative, and he's really been embracing that, and it's been really cool to see. But one of the things with our partnership was that I was always the one who was going by gut and instinct.
Right.
And he is always the one that is like, we need more than your gut and your instinct to make this decision. And that's actually been really healthy for me because it has forced me to come up with more than just, because I know we're doing this because I know we need to do it. Like, that's not good enough all the time. But at the same time, he's also come to recognize that my gut is usually right. Not always, but it usually is. And I'm not saying that as like, one-upping him or anything, but he started to appreciate that there is something to that. It's not always just about numbers or data. There has to be some kind of passion tugging at you from the depths in order to make it the right decision. So yeah, I don't think you should ever discount what your gut is telling you, because sometimes your gut is also warning you that something's not right. So
yeah.
I think another thing that sort of helps me prioritize, like I kind of touched on before, is how much money do I need this month?
Yeah.
That's certainly been something that really does make some of my decisions for me. But I think maybe that's something, if you're struggling with a lot of different things, trying to figure out what should I pursue now? What should I pursue next? Is maybe stepping back and taking a look at like what your bigger life goals are, and they don't have to be money. Money is important, but maybe your life goal is a better work-life balance. Maybe your life goal is to be able to spend more time with your kids, or you want to travel. Life goals can be pretty much anything you want them to be. And then working out, like looking at all the different things that you want to pursue and figuring out which ones fit best with where you are in life right now.
Yeah, and I think looking at it not as, I have too many projects, or I'm unfocused, or there's too many things that I'm never going to finish. I think looking at it, like prioritizing them and putting them in an order of things that need to be completed or should be completed, and when they should be completed helps. Because I think, like the stigma behind somebody who's multi-passionate, it looks like you have a bunch of unfinished projects, and that's not necessarily true. I think, yes, taking a step back to prioritize will really kind of eliminates that from your own mind as well.
Yeah, and that is one thing that my parents did instill for me, in me and my brother from a very early age, is that we could try as many things as we wanted, but we had to finish them. So you want to play soccer this year? Okay, you can play soccer, but you have to finish the full year. Yeah. You can't drop out halfway through. You want to, take an art class? Okay, but you have to stick it out. Like, there was no, it was equal parts learning to finish what we start, and equal part, I think, sort of learning that just because something doesn't grab you right away doesn't mean you might not grow to appreciate it if you stick it out. I'm thinking of piano lessons. I didn't always want to stick those out, but now as an adult, I am very appreciative of the fact that I did. So that's something for me. Like I do a lot of different things, but I do have a tendency to finish them. I mean, I'm still in my 40s. I still struggle if I'm reading a book that is so boring with not finishing it. I feel horrible if I don't finish a book.
Oh, I do too. I'm the same way. It's very, very rare for me not to finish a book. I will always finish a book.
Read a lot of really terrible books because it's so ingrained in me that you have to finish what you start. But at the same time, I do think that as a multi-passionate creative, there are times where you have to learn to let go of things that just aren't working.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Like that terrible book. It's okay. Life's too short. You don't need to finish the book.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think sometimes if you try something and it's just not what you thought it was going to be, I do think it's okay to
Yeah.
set it aside as long as you give it the the old college try and really try to give it a chance. But at the end of the day, one of the things that's great about being a multi-passionate is we always have a list of things
Exactly.
to try if something doesn't work out. So yeah, I think learning how and when to let go of something is something that we shouldn't feel ashamed of necessarily.
No, exactly. And having multiple projects throughout your life, I mean, that's like what makes it exciting. I mean, not doing lots of different things. It's the whole point.
Exactly. Life is too short to do the same thing over and over again every day forever. As long as you are able to provide for the people in your life that you're responsible for, I don't understand why. I think somewhere along the line, providing for your family and your loved ones got mixed up with doing the same thing every day, whether you like it or
Yeah.
not.
Yeah. It was a means to an end for a lot. And a lot of people have careers that are a means to an end. And that's like just not for me.
And some people have to do that, and there's nothing wrong with
Yep.
that either. Like, we all have to do what we have to do
Yep.
to put a roof over our head and to put shoes on our kids' feet. But yes, but I do think that there are a lot of opportunities out there to be able to do all those things while still doing a wide variety of different tasks. And in fact, that's how some people have to cobble a living together today. They have to do 3 or 4 different things just to make ends meet. So it can definitely be an advantage in that respect. I want to, because this is like a business, creativity and business podcast, I want to kind of turn it back to how to brand yourself and how to make a career for yourself when you are this type of person. And I think the branding one is really difficult for a lot of us because we don't know where to start. I think that's the hard part. Like, where do you even start? I do all these things. How do I tell people I do all these things? And I think maybe one way to do that is to focus on like a personal brand.
Yeah.
But at the same time, this is where I'm at right now. I mean, I'm just going to put it all out there in the podcast. I have 3 businesses. One I'm in the process of selling. The other, well, actually, I have more than 3 businesses, but it's very complicated. And so this is what I'm struggling with. I have a partnership that I am in the process of selling, and then I have a sole proprietorship, which is sort of like the umbrella for all the things that I do.
Right. Mm-hmm.
But it's not my name. It has an actual name. And so I have an Etsy shop that uses this name. I have my freelancing business that uses that name. This podcast sits under that umbrella, but it has a different name. And then I also do like small business coaching and things like that, which sits under my personal name.
Right.
And I have 2 blogs that kind of go under this umbrella, and I am just really struggling right now with like, how do I put that all out there? But at the same time, as a smart, savvy business person, there are certain pieces that I might want to sell one day. And so I want them to have a life away from me as Melissa Hartfield, so that I can say goodbye to them when the time comes, if the time comes.
Right.
And then, yet I still want people to know who I am so that they can find me, when I'm maybe no longer associated with those businesses. So, yeah, I have been struggling with this for over a year, and I still haven't really gotten any closer to figuring out what my solution is. And I suspect I'm not alone. So
no, I don't think so. Yeah, I think that, I mean, it's funny because I think unknowingly I created a brand on my Instagram through my social media, because it started off as like, the Food Girl in Town's Instagram. It was why I got social media, was to like promote my blog, like, 7 or 8 years ago now. But it evolved into basically me just like being an open book about making my blog, about writing, about freelancing, about traveling, about photography, and it just became me. And I remember there's been so many discussions. I remember like, years of forums of people deciding, do I need a personal account? And then I need my blog account. And I just never wanted to spend the time doing that. I wanted to just be me. and I was the blogger, and I was the photographer, and I was all those things. And I think that has helped me create a brand without me like setting out, be like, I'm going to make myself a brand. I kind of think it's just being an open book. I'm a very open person. You can ask me anything. I put the flops up. I put the travel mistakes up. Like, I don't hide any of it. So I think that just kind of happened inadvertently. At the same time, selling that to someone in a job interview is not necessarily an easy feat. And like LinkedIn, I'm like a freelance writer and a journalist, but I'm also a photographer. I'm a food stylist. I'm an archaeological drawer. So like, it is very challenging, but I do really like those kind of the few words, I guess. I mean, yeah, I guess if it's like, I'm a writer, I actually do on my business cards. I have 3 words, and it is writer, traveler, cheese eater. And I really do feel like that is my, I wonder if I put that on my LinkedIn, how it would go over.
I think it would go over fine, to be honest. I think I'm seeing more and more of it over there. And LinkedIn has always been a very corporate type platform, but I think that's definitely changing as more and more of us are kind of in this freelance gig economy. Yeah, so I don't think that's unusual at all. Interestingly, most of the messages I get on LinkedIn are regarding positions that relate to my last corporate gig over 10 years ago, which was in tech. So, I mean, it's very obvious that I have not kept up those skills on LinkedIn over the years, and yet people, and I mean, once you stop keeping up your skills in tech, you're obsolete. So, yeah, I find it fascinating that people are still coming to me looking for a business intelligence developer. It's like, wow, I would be so out of the loop. But, but yeah, I think there's definitely a lot of the stigma about having all those different titles, for lack of a better word, has started to dissipate a little bit. I certainly hope it has. Just the fact that I'm seeing the word multi-passionate creator being used more and more in the last year makes me think that is something that people are really starting to embrace and appreciate. Yeah, it's been interesting to watch. I remember when you changed your Instagram handle, actually. And I remember thinking at the time, like, oh, that's an interesting decision. And I remember thinking I wanted to ask you why you had done that, because I was just sort of getting to the point where I was like trying to figure it out for myself. And yeah, it's a very weird thing to try and brand yourself when you are multi-passionate. And so I've been thinking about that so much. And I actually had somebody contact me with a really great opportunity last month. And we've been going back and forth through the negotiations of it. And she asked me the other day, like, if I had, it was around some photography. And she was asking me the other day if I had my photography like in one place, and I don't. It's scattered all over the internet, and it was like, and I was trying to like think of like, how do I direct her to all the things that I've done, and I don't have a way to do that. And that really brought home to me, like, I have to figure this out. I have to get better at this. I think it almost comes down to having like a portfolio site. Do you have a portfolio type site?
I do. I own GabbyPeyton.com. Years ago, I bought it because I was like, I just need to have GabbyPeyton.com in case, I stop blogging or, something happens. I do have portfolio. I don't update it often enough, and I really should. But it's just the thing. If you Google my name, my portfolio doesn't come up. Like, you know what I mean? Like, and I think as a journalist, just all my bylines come up. So it's like, I don't really, like, I need to have it, but I also don't need to have it because I feel like Google does that work for me now. Like, my headshot comes up, like everything comes up. It's like really odd, but it's something that has been on my goal for 2020 was to update it and or maybe get a web designer to update it because it's like really not easily navigatable. But like, yeah, like I think thinking about the handle on Instagram, and I think again that's Gabby Peyton Eats, that comes up pretty quickly when you Google me. But like changing it from my blog name to my name, everything in my life is like I said, an open book. Like I wanted to be able to put photos of Adam and I online, or like my sister or my friends, because me cooking for them and then writing about it on the blog is just as much a part of my creative life and my work life as it is my private life, I never separated those things. And that doesn't work for everybody. But for me, that was just like, that was, I guess part of my brand, which not knowing that, but that was me cooking for people or eating out with people or traveling, just all was part of like what I do creatively and for work. So I think it just kind of happened that way. But yeah.
That's interesting. I do own melissahartfield.com. It is also my food and photography and creativity blog, which is Eyes Bigger Than My Stomach, redirects to melissahartfield.com. So I've been trying to think, like, can I separate those two? Can I, which I think is ultimately what I'm going to have to do.
Yeah.
But yeah, that makes me tired.
I know.
About that. Because I just know that's going to be a lot of work and probably going to be a little bit expensive as well. So, but yeah, exactly. It's been, my Instagram handle is the handle that I have used online since 1995 when I was finished university. And it's, people know me as well by that handle as they do by the name of my businesses. And so I've kind of struggled, like, should I change that to reflect my business name, or should I just keep it? It's a lot to think about. And I know a lot of people really struggle with it. And the irony is that one of the things I do is I help a lot of clients figure this out, and I can't figure it out for myself.
Yeah. Well, I guess what it comes down to, I think, is, do you want to make Melissa Hartfield a brand, or do you want to make your business, like, you know what I mean? Like, if you want to do that, then yeah, separating them and then making melissahartfield.com like the center of everything. That may be if you want to go in that direction.
Yeah, I think ultimately that's what I'm going to have to do. And there's a few things that are out there that I think I've outgrown, and it's probably time to say goodbye to them. And then there's other things that need to be, it feels like there's so many things right now, and trying to figure out what the home is for each of those feels a bit overwhelming. And what I need to do is I need to be the CEO of my business and work on my business instead of in my businesses, which is what I'm doing right now. I'm working in my businesses. So all this advice we have given you on the podcast for the last 4 or 5 months, like, I don't follow any of it. I shouldn't say that, but the point is that we all struggle with this stuff, even when it seems like we have our stuff together. The reality is that all of us are struggling with these hard decisions in the background, and we're all trying to figure it out. So I hope that gives hope to some people out there.
Oh, I think the biggest thing to take away from this is it's okay if you're interested in a lot of different things. It doesn't make you lazy or unfocused. It makes you interesting.
It does. It makes you interesting. And one of my absolute favorite words, and when Lisa and I were kind of figuring out the podcast and she looked up and all the things we wanted to do with it, the word that kept floating to the top was curious. It's a word that I love. I love people who are curious. And I think that there's nothing like that is, like you said, it make people who are curious make the world an interesting place. And we need people like that. And I don't think you should ever feel embarrassed or ashamed or like you failed because you can't find the one thing.
It's more exciting when you get to do lots of different things every day.
And, if you ever decide that you want to write a memoir one day, think of all the things you're going to be able to talk about. I mean, your memoir would be amazing. So,
thank you.
But yeah, I think this episode wasn't really so much about solving a problem. Well, maybe it's about solving my branding problems. This is my therapy session with Gabby. But yeah, this episode wasn't meant so much to be about directing you to how you should do something or giving you steps. It was more, I guess, a mindset episode where we just wanted to really dive into this thing that we are both very curious about and that we both really identify with, and trying to figure out, what it means to be somebody who is a multi-passionate creative and why it's okay to embrace that and not feel like you haven't done something right because you like to do all these different things. So yeah, I think we've probably said all we need to say at this point. So all that to say that I hope that some of you found, I guess, a little bit of comfort in this episode to realize that if you do identify as being somebody like that you're not alone, that there's lots of us out there, and that I think more and more of us are becoming comfortable embracing that and being very vocal about that's who we are. And I hope that maybe that gave some of you the courage to also embrace this, if this is who you are, and to put it out there and be proud of it. And remember, it makes you a masterpiece. I love that quote. I love it. That's such a great quote. Yes. So that is it for this week. Gabby, again, thank you so much for joining me this month. It's been so fun. I've had such a good time chatting with you. And next week, for those of you savvy listeners out there, you've probably recognized that there is actually one more Friday in the month of October. It is one of those weird months where there's 5 Fridays. And so I will be back next week. I don't know if I'm going to be back solo or if I'm going to have somebody with me, but I do know what we're going to be talking about. We're going to be talking about media kits next week, and why all small businesses, small creative businesses, should have one. Not just bloggers. I think media kits are something that's associated with the blogger/influencer world, but I'm going to make a case next week for why all of us need to have them. So that's what we're going to be chatting about next week. And yeah, that's it for this week. Thank you again, Gabby. It's great to have you here.
Thanks for having me. I had a great time.
So we'll see you all next week, everybody. Thanks for listening.
Thank you so much for joining us for the And She Looked Up Creative Hour. If you're looking for links or resources mentioned in this episode, you can find detailed show notes on our website at andshelookedup.com. While you're there, be sure to sign up for our newsletter for more business tips, profiles of inspiring Canadian creative women, and so much more. If you enjoyed this episode, please be sure to subscribe to the show via your podcast app of choice so you never miss an episode. We always love to hear from you, so we'd love it if you'd leave us a review through iTunes or Apple Podcasts. Drop us a note via our website at andshelookedup.com, or come say hi on Instagram at andshelookedup. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next week.